Live pictures there from outside Kenyatta University along Thika Road, where the institution has been closed, shut down indefinitely this morning by the University Senate. All students ordered to vacate the university. As you can see there, students carrying their luggage are leaving, exiting the university. The picture there you're seeing is right. This is a scene right outside the main gate of Kenyatta University. Students carrying their luggage and heading home, possibly for December holidays. Yes, because lecturers are already on strike. Students now have been sent home. Most likely, the soonest they will return to the institution will be next year. So happy holidays to them. That's the situation at the university, at the Kenyatta University, where students went on rampage yesterday, burning down the school's old administration block, which houses the current finance department. Students complaining of quite a number of things, increased school fees being one of them, as well as a lecturer strike, which continues to bite. We're still following up events in Nyeri as well. A day before they lay to rest the departed governor, Dr. Wahome Gakuru, passed on last week in a road accident. That funeral takes place tomorrow at Karicho village and will be attended by many dignitaries. We'll be getting an update from Martin Monene shortly from that end. He has moved to, he's heading actually to Karicho village, where the burial will take place. We'll also be heading back to Kisumu for an update from Laura Otieno with regard to what's happening from that end. I'm still in studio with Senator Irungu Kangata from Murang'a, Nelson Harvey, an advocate of the High Court, Joseph Simeha, NASA strategist, and a former acting chief registrar of the judiciary, Kakai Kissinger. Gentlemen, we continue looking at what's happening at the airport, and we'll be going back there momentarily for a report, an update from Stephen Leto. But this has caused quite some ruckus, and if, in a short while we'll also be looking at other developments in Kenya, especially in anticipation of the establishment of people's assemblies and what exactly that means. I'm sure with all the lawyers here and the strategist, you can tell us exactly what will be happening with regard to that, what's happening at the Supreme Court now that the judges have retreated to write their judgment. But let's finish up with what's happening at the airport. And gentlemen, this is not the very first time that leaders are being welcomed at the airport. We've seen President Mwai Kibaki welcome back before the 2002 election, and there was a grand reception at the airport. We've seen Raila Odinga being welcomed back, hence the hashtag Baba While You're Away a few years back. We've seen President Uhuru Kenyatta being welcomed back from The Hague, to be exact, on October 9th, 2014, and even addressed a crowd right outside the VIP area. Yes, it does cause quite some chaos within the airport. It is true that it interferes with the business of the airport. It is true that such a procession can actually cause a lot of traffic snarl-ups, whichever road they decide to use. Yes, either way, it can actually be put on some weight on the economy, even the city's economy. But how big of a problem is it? And don't you think that the police could have handled such better instead of outlawing it altogether? Because yes, it has happened before. As you agree, probably it's a matter of logistics, not necessarily an illegality, Senator.
No, there is some marked difference between what is obtaining now and what was obtaining in those other instances that you have cited. Number one, the people who are now congregating there have turned themselves into a rebel movement. They are calling themselves National Resistance Movement. So therefore, this is a quasi-legal entity that can cause chaos. And you can see these days they are adopting military fatigue. So you never know. They may come there and cause chaos. Number two, we have seen a good illustration of their ability to disrupt civil order when they were able to stop elections from happening in 4 counties of Nyanza region. So if at all they were able to do that, there's nothing that can stop them from disrupting transport arrangements in the airport. So that is the main difference between now and that and the original. Those are the examples that you have cited. Okay. We don't want to take anything to chance. I would urge the government to continue and to proceed to put security measures. If there were, what they did in Nyanza was to be repeated at the airport, then you never know. Then we will be in a lot of problems. And remember, they have said they are bringing 1 million people. My colleague here is doubting as to whether that is true. Where But who tells you it's not true? Who tells you?
Well, Kissinger, even a rally planned later for Uhuru Park has been outlawed because they say it will interfere with the national exams. What do you say to that?
I think, as I initially talked about, was the issue of the logistical nightmare. But let's look into history and look at what happened in 1991-92 when Kenneth Matiba came from London that time, and he was then vying for presidency during that year. And you saw how people went to the airport to welcome him, and it was then allowed. And the reason why they allowed it is because people said, look, our leader has been out of the country and he's been sick and he's coming, and we're going to invite him and welcome him. It was very peaceful, and actually the police at that time provided security. Now, you have to analyze these issues in perspective of the scenarios and the politics of the day. When you look at the nature of the politics of NASA, is not very friendly in terms of peace and harmony. And therefore, you find that the police might be very cautious, knowing very well that NASA exhibits some characters or attributes of destruction. And so we have to be very careful in terms of how are we going to allow him to come into this country when you have 1 million people going. And once NASA says it's 1 million people, you don't have to doubt it's 1 million people. So then we must be aware that although there are 1 million people, or they might be even less, because you don't need 1 million people to cause destruction. You can even do it with 10 people. We must control. So I think that the logic,
Uhuru Park?
I think the logic, I'm coming to that.
Yeah.
I think the logic is, if it was a political outfit, just like the senator is talking about, if it was a political outfit that is peace-oriented, that is harmony, that has decorum, that can do something without this much hype, then I don't think the police will have had issues. But then look at, just for example, what happened yesterday. Motorists are driving along the southern bypass. Innocent motorists going home, but look what happened to them. So I think it's just an issue of caution. Caution, total caution, that look, this is an airport and we can't allow that. Now, when it comes to the other part where they are allowed to do picketing, demonstration, and all these are all anchored in the Constitution, and it's allowed. But remember that some of these human rights instruments, as a human rights lawyer, have limits. There are limits to some of these things. It's therefore, that's not in carte blanche where you have to do whatever you have to do. But look at what happened is that I think it will have been prudent, and the strategist of NASA is here, it will have been prudent for NASA to have gone to the police, negotiated with the police, and said, look, provide us security. Because the law just talks about the police officers providing security. Negotiated with the police and said, look, provide us security. We want to have a rally at wherever we want to have a rally, and this rally is about welcoming Baba, and we have nothing else to do other than doing that. Okay. But when that negotiation doesn't take place, or when that fact that you cannot understand and respect authority and go to it to seek for authority, because the law actually says you must seek for permission. It's not about a right of just going to do it. So I think the challenge is that we as Kenyans, we are not speaking to each other. We've left the political atmosphere take charge of the situation. We are not listening to one another. We are not building a nation in a cohesive way. And that's the biggest nightmare we have right now.
Mwanasimeka, as a strategist, do you think antagonizing the police continuously, assuming that the police are perpetually enemies of NASA, as a strategy, do you think it's working? Because that means every time you want to do something, the police will be looking at you from a point of mistrust.
First of all, I want to call these two gentlemen to order. You know, they are lawyers, but perhaps they haven't accumulated sufficient, I don't want to use Gidus words that were very rude yesterday, sufficient experience to understand how the law applies. And they're casting aspersions. One, you do not call any person or organization, you don't cast aspersions unless you can provide evidence. And let me just use the most recent example that my brother Kissinger Kakai is giving along Southern Bypass last night. That, you know, there was some riotous mob, that they were stoning vehicles. Apparently they looted and even burnt a vehicle. All those criminal acts, condemnable, actionable criminal acts. But where do they get license to say that those are NASA supporters? Those, we know it's now on record that Jubilee through what is this international PR firm, Cambridge Analytica, has been hiring people to infiltrate NASA demos and cause chaos so that the police can react. Jubilee Party, I say that without any fear of contradiction and on record, because there's now evidence.
Are you saying that the deteriorating nature of the relationship between NASA and the police has been engineered by Jubilee?
Yes, I say this, very knowing that, if it's liable, someone could take me to court, and I'm very comfortable that I have evidence to defend myself, that this is a PR firm that they hired, and part of the strategy of this PR firm is hire people, with criminal minds to get into NASA protests and then cause chaos. Of course, NASA will be blamed for those kind of chaos. Provoke the police, throw stones at the police, loot, like what happened in Kisumu.
And NASA has no way of countering such.
No, how do you counter that? It's only when these things began to leak out, because we would wonder, because we have marshals during these protests. We have leaders, organized, we have marshals, and just a section of the crowd would engage in behavior that is foreign to us, and would wonder, who are these? Where did they come from? Until this evidence began to seep out, that there are people who are actually being hired deliberately by this Cambridge Analytica, who are under the employ of Jubilee. So it's not right to cast aspersions and just say, because you are NASA, you are not peaceful, you are not for harmony and so on, and yet none of the leaders and so on have ever been taken to court for that. Secondly, enjoyment of human rights in this country, yes, they can be limited. But it expressly says, Kissinger, in our constitution, by written law. You cannot limit a right by just word of mouth, by edict, by fiat. It must be by written law.
Okay.
And that you cannot dispute, and especially being lawyers, you should know that. So those are things that we all ought to, have fidelity towards, what the law provides, and not just cast aspersions because it's a political outfit that we do not like.
Yes.
NASA has never constituted itself into any illegal rebel group. NASA is resisting legally as permitted in the Constitution. We haven't got anywhere near armed rebellion or something like that. This is, well, you could call it rebellion. This is political rebellion, which is legitimate. This political rebellion is legal and is legitimate. Okay. So I think those things need to be understood in perspective. In fact, the 1991 example, 91 example that Kakai Kissinger gives of Matiba, that time the political environment was even more polarized. We even had a lot more chaos. But look, because I think we had a lot more intelligent police commanders, they knew how to handle the situation. They allowed. Yes, it causes discomfort. That we totally agree. Yes, it causes disruption to normal life. That we totally agree. And that's the more reason why then the police, if they were intelligent, would, once they've been notified, it is not for NASA again to go and beg that let's negotiate. It is the police to request, okay, we've received your notification. Yes. Come and let us discuss how best we handle this situation to minimize disruptions.
But Nelson Harvey, but you must admit that NASA has not really worked hard in trying to get a very good relationship with the police, and probably you're paying for that kind of deteriorating relationship in such instances.
No, not at all. Let us make this very clear. A majority of Kenyans who are affiliated to the reform movement that is now popularly known as a national resistance movement have a very good relationship with the police, and we cannot vilify the entire police force. We have very good police officers who know how to do their work. But you see, the culture of exclusion that has been the punctuation mark of the Jubilee administration has also permeated the police force. We have rogue police officers who are in actual fact criminals. And if you interrogate this scenario more clearly, you will see those are the individuals that we are talking about. And if you can compare with the case in Zimbabwe, it is these criminals within the police force, these criminals within the executive that need to be dealt with by this resistance movement. In fact, as Senator Orengo said yesterday, we need to arrest these individuals who pretend to be the policemen, but in actual fact, they are criminals. Yeah. Because how do you explain somebody in police uniform clobbering a peaceful bystander, pedestrian? And those are the things we're talking about. It is not that we don't have a good relationship with the police. Look, if a majority of the people in NASA represents close to 70% of Kenyans, you cannot tell me that we don't have a similar representation within the police force. But what has happened? We've seen in areas that are perceived to be opposition strongholds, the leaders of the police forces are individuals picked from different communities. They'll pick a rogue police officer from a community that is not in consonant, that is not sympathetic to the reform cause, and post it in Kibera. You understand? They'll post this officer in Kawangware. They will post this officer in Kisumu. And that is the reason as to why we have seen this genocide by installment being conducted by this road.
And even as we speak, Bwana Nelson Harvey, we are getting live pictures there from Mombasa Road, and we do understand some people had tried barricading that sections of that road, and police have had to try and clear it using stones. Some sections of Mombasa Road have been barricaded, and police are trying to clear the road as well. It means movement on that road has really been affected. And I believe this should be a section, can't really tell exactly where that is.
North Airport.
North Airport.
Yeah.
North Airport Road?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, part of the Eastern Bypass, yes. Part of the Eastern Bypass, a road that could be leading not really directly into the airport though. Yes, Bwana Nelson Harvey.
Just a quick one. Those are exactly Cambridge Analytica tactics. That is exactly so. Those are part of the briefs they have.
It is a very serious allegation you make,
Exactly.
Bwana
I am prepared to stand by it publicly.
Let's give credence to that argument.
Yeah.
Where were the police when this was happening? We're just being shown the picture after the fact. You understand? We're being shown the picture when the police are congregating
Supposedly
information to countermount the people.
No, look here. Look here. We are talking of 1 million demonstrators. Surely,
But
we cannot 1 million demonstrators. Yes, no, surely you're asking how do you...
Why are you so concerned about the numbers?
Gentlemen, let's have
No,
it
it is
let's have it
because numbers train police capacity to monitor rioters.
Okay.
The more you
but
are, the harder it is for you to check them.
Yes. What I exactly talked about, that NASA brands itself not in a very organized way, and it's more of unpeaceful manner of handling things. You can't tell me that this is the police doing it. These are NASA supporters. Look how they are peddling the stones. We have already, there's already an SMS going on and a tweet going on that they've already banned one car next to Taj Mahal, which is just where those pictures are. Now, is that what you call a peaceful demonstration? When the police were probably trying to stop them from going into the airport, this is what it led to. So now you understand why the police will be very reluctant to allow the supporters to head anywhere near there.
But don't you think that this is also a direct result of that police action, that probably if police had simply allowed some of this, that procession to take place peacefully and actually try to marshal them as well, that it would have been a done deal sooner than expected?
When you see NASA supporters all over, they say a demonstration without a tear gas is not a demonstration. To them, there has to be action before it's actually called a demonstration. And Mr. Simicha knows this very well, that there has to be tear gas. So whatever way, even if you allow them to peacefully demonstrate, to peacefully walk, they will cause chaos somewhere. So this is the branding that we need to declone from NASA.
You see, in politics, there is this what we call the double speak, where the leader will always be saying nice things. Hey, no, we want peace and love, we don't fight, hey, we are not violent people. But immediately the cameras go off. Now they start inciting people. Chini ya maji, hey, you ensure you fight for the demonstration to have tea. Let me tell you one thing. They love drama. In politics, about drama. If you just come and demonstrate, hey, Baba has come, hey, I'm sure they'll say, that one has no impact. But now when they see,
Mr. Simicha right now,
you see, they are very happy and smiling.
I'm laughing at what you're saying.
But you do agree that as a strategist...
Why he is laughing.
No, they've made a direct attack that I need to defend.
I'll give you
a look at these skills. There is now, in their minds, they'll be saying, look, we are exerting pressure on the government. You see? But if it was just a demonstration, a peaceful demonstration, there is nothing to them. But I can tell you, they can't say that. But that is the truth. So that is why, as a government, you must preempt that.
Okay.
You see?
But as a strategy, surely, it must worry NASA that this is a kind of picture that is painted of the coalition. That every time NASA supporters are involved in something, it ends up like this. Surely, even as a strategist, it must worry NASA.
It doesn't. I'll explain that in context, because we have to put that in context. Yes. But first, I must defend myself from those attacks from these two gentlemen. What they're saying is wrong. It is true. Part of it is true. What Irungu senator says about politics, for some politicians, it's true. You know, the ones who shout a lot about peace, but then what they are organizing is something else. And we have examples in this country who are indicted by the ICC for exactly doing that. We know what kind of, who those are. They are not part of NASA. And there's evidence that that happened, especially in the Rift Valley, in Naivasha and in Eldoret. It was not NASA politicians. And they continue to shout peace and prayers and so on, but they organize something else under the table. So you are right, Senator, that happens in our politics, led by politicians whom we know in this country. Secondly, what you ask me, Dugu.
Back to you.
Secondly, what you are asking me, you are right, we worry. And especially, we used to wonder, where is this coming from? When we sit and we brief our marshals and we insist it must be peaceful. I know this, some of our supporters are very colorful and dramatic. If you have watched, whenever the police leave them alone, they will dance on the road, they will carry huge stones, they will carry twigs and so on, sing and dance, and then the drama ends there. Nobody gets hurt, no property gets destroyed. But we wondered, who are these? A section of them that want to cause chaos, destroy property and burn things and so on. It puzzled us for a while until these memos began to leak of what Cambridge Analytica is doing. I am almost certain, though I have no evidence for this particular one happening now, I will not be surprised if it comes out that this is part of them doing this kind of thing. Branding NASA as a violent, destructive political formation when we are not. So it does, it worries us.
If at all it's a strategy from the other side, then it's working very well.
Well, no, we are countering it. It worries us. I wouldn't go into details of what we are doing now, but we are countering it. Yes. It is something that we are countering to ensure that, first of all, by educating the public, letting the public know exactly what is going on, and many other things that I may not discuss here. So, yes, it worries us, but we are countering it.
But the branding is still there, Bona Nelson Harvey. The two gentlemen just speaking, the first thing they say, we know what they do. And you do agree that everywhere where NASA is mentioned, anytime they engage the police, they engage the IEBC, they engage any other institution, there is some violence at the end of the day. And that is a branding that's growing every day. Don't you think that once they say if it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it
but
probably
it's not even
is a
some,
duck.
it's too much violence actually.
No, KK, let me answer this. I don't perceive any dent or smear on the character of NASA or now the transformation to the resistance movement, because we've always been a peaceful movement. And I'll give you examples of what happened yesterday. You can see an honorable member of parliament has mounted a motorbike to enable his easy access to Kibera because of the confrontation, because of the roadblock that the police have just put in place. Now, how does that amount to a criminal offense? You understand? Now, again, Honorable Senator James Orengo and Senator Johnson Mudama are marooned. They are not able to access a peaceful ground. They found peaceful means of accessing that ground. There is a big crowd of people waiting for them to be told the next agenda. And then we are told the police are looking for them. Can the police not look for a job to do? They have a lot to do. And you see, they must understand one thing. I think the policemen must be taken to a physics class, because when we were in high school, Kakai was very good in physics. You see, for every force, there's counter force. You understand? There's counter force. And you see, unless you study mathematics and science and understand how things operate, if you bring brute force there to confront the people, what do you expect the people to do? They will return the favor and give you brute force. But you see, at the end of the day, the person who has the tools of coercion, the weapons, the tanks, the guns, the fatigues, and the uniforms, is the government. If the government did not deploy force there, you will not be seeing this. You understand? And even as we look at that picture that is going across on TV, you realize there is a lot of credence in the argument that Shimeka put across. This is most likely to be the business community, the Nairobi business community. I highly doubt if these are actually...
Look at the picture. Please look at your uniform there.
Most people are passing. I put the same one for
Gentlemen, allow me.
The former member of parliament for Embakasi, Sumra.
Yes, that is Irshad Sumra.
To destroy property.
No, there was no destruction.
No, those ones are just,
yes.
Gentlemen, if you all speak at once, unfortunately,
they are busy.
If you all speak at once, none of you can be heard. So we have to go one at a time. But this, we're receiving live pictures from different places. The JKIA on one side, and the Eastern Bypass on the other, where on the Eastern Bypass we can already see a procession. We are not certain which direction they're going to. At the JKIA, we can see a few people there, very animated in their actions. We do not know exactly what the intention is, if at all they're still trying to access the airport, or if police have managed to block them once again. But we'll be getting an update from our reporter from that end, Stephen Leto, in a short while to tell us exactly what's happening there. Those are live pictures that you're receiving. But gentlemen, you say this should not be equated to NASA, but even as a strategy, and Nelson Harvey must agree that if at all it is a strategy by Jubilee to have NASA appear as violent and chaotic, then it probably is working.
No, it's not working. You can see the motorcade of Sumra was proceeding in a very peaceful procession. And then from nowhere, somebody appears and seems to down that, that lighting pole. And you see, that this is what Cambridge Analytica has been doing, infiltrating the reform movement with certain individuals who are likely to cause these things and create news out of it. But you see, it will not deter what is otherwise a lawful cause. And if you look at the manner in which NASA and the National Resistance Movement have pursued their agenda, they have confined the agenda within the four corners of the law. And if you are to interrogate and ask any of us, we'll support each and every step with an article in the Constitution, with the section in the statute, and that is why we keep on reminding them. We have reached a point in time where we no longer tell the Jubilee administration that I wish you could do this, because I think they have reached a point in time where they have lost their ears. They can't listen anymore. So all they need to do is to see how differently things can be done within the confines of
Let's take a break from what's happening at the airport and the roads leading to and out of the airport. Let's get an update from Mombasa. I do understand there's been a very unfortunate incident where two people have unfortunately drowned. Let's get an update from our reporter there, Asha Bekidusa, on phone. Very good morning to you. Maybe not a very good morning with that kind of news, but kindly tell us what are the circumstances surrounding these deaths. Asha?
Good morning to you, Fred. I'm coming to live from Mombasa. But in the last 1 hour, I was actually in Mariakani area where two people have drowned, including a 14-year-old boy and a 20-year-old boy. According to the OCPD Kinango, Frederick Lai, is that the two drowned when the 14-year-old was swimming in the community dam in Kalalani area, which is in Mariakani, Kwale County actually. And as the 20-year-old man was trying to rescue the 14-year-old boy, actually he drowned. That was yesterday night. However, the rescue efforts were hampered yesterday due to darkness because they drowned around 6 p.m. in the evening yesterday. However, today their bodies have been retrieved and they have been taken to Coast General Hospital. You must remember there are some who are saying that this community dam was dug due to the ongoing construction of SGR. While SGR was being constructed, some of these dams came by there. And apart from that, here in Mombasa, today a suspect is expected to be arraigned in court. A suspect who is suspected to have killed the businessman, Asian businessman, Moise Ismail G, actually is to be arraigned in court any time from now. And you remember that this businessman was actually kidnapped on 11th of November, and his body was found dumped along Bomboluli area in Freetown 2 days after the day he was kidnapped. Actually, according to the sources or police officer, they said that the kidnappers were demanding 2 million ransom, and actually the family had already given out 300,000 to the kidnappers. And you must remember that 2 days ago there was also another suspect who was arrested and also arraigned in court, who is an M-Pesa agent. Fred.
Thank you, Asha. Asha Bekidusa with an update on various news events happening in Mombasa. A drowning of two people, including a 14-year-old, as they swam in a community dam, as well as a suspect being arrested in relation to the murder of a trader last week. Back in studio, we now want to change the discussion and talk about what's happening in the county assemblies. At least 8 of the county assemblies have since debated and passed motions proposing the establishment of people's assemblies. Most of these counties that have done so are in Western Kenya and parts of Nyanza, one at least in Ukambani, that's Makueni. And the question is, and probably I'll ask Senator Irungu Kangata, I'm sure you have questions as well, as I do. My question is, what next after this motion is passed by the county assembly? What do we expect to happen next? I'll be expecting Bwana Simeha and Bwana Nelson Harvey to answer this. So let's allow the other two gentlemen to ask these questions. Senator.
Yes, nothing per se. When you look at the functions of the counties as established by the Constitution, fourth schedule has clearly demarcated the functions of the counties and the functions of the National Assembly. You will see that there is nothing much per se a county assembly can do in the relationship to the issues they are purporting to discuss. For instance, issues to do with elections. There is a mandate of an independent body called the IBC. I don't know, including issues relating to the presidency, the powers of the presidency, I don't know, swearing the presidency. Those are not matters within the purview of the county. So therefore, I think personally I had raised a notice where I intended to have those matters discussed. I want us to bring to the attention of the counties that there are repercussions if they would go outside the Constitution, and those repercussions may include disbursement of those counties by the president, and therefore, well, they can proceed and discuss from where I see it, but they must know the boundaries. If they go to huge lengths, if they meander outside their key mandates, they may face drastic actions from the president as provided by the Constitution. Be that as it may, two things. One, nothing will happen. Two, if they purport to do something quite drastic, they need to be notified. There are drastic measures the president can do, including disbanding those counties.
But if at all, in as far as concerns, you have concerns, seeing what's happening at the county level, seeing that a number of counties are already passing. What is your major concern with this?
My major concern is a situation where they may adopt things which are extra-constitutional. That is my main fear. If they were just to establish talking shops, that's okay. They just meet, they talk, that's okay. Ventilating, that's okay. But if they were to meet and say, for instance, no, we don't recognize the President Uhuru, we recognize President Raila Odinga, that's a danger sign. If they were to meet and say, no, we are seceding, that's a danger sign. And as we speak, by the way, we have a live example in Spain, a place called Catalonia. There is a certain, almost a devolved unit that has been disbanded by the central government in Spain. That can as well happen in Kenya. We have a constitutional mechanism for that. So, to me, the choice is theirs. If they were to confine themselves to just talking, discussing, that's okay. But if they were to get out of what is constitutionally mandated upon them by the law, then that would be very dangerous.
So far what they've done, nothing wrong with it? So far nothing per se, but it's something from where I sit that ought to be discussed by the Senate. No wonder I raised that issue. I made that intention where I was told to redraft again that motion. I will be doing that very soon. It is good that maybe they get correct advice from the Senate. The Senate, being the organ that deals with the devolved units, is the right forum for us to advise those units. But in the worst case scenario, I think they can get themselves into major constitutional problems. Kakai Kissinger, what do you say to this?
I think we have a constitution, and the Katiba is very elaborate in terms of institutional frameworks that have been established in this country, in terms of how to regulate the functions of Kenyans. And when you look at devolution, that was the spirit of devolution, to take the leadership back to the people so that they may be able to devolve themselves and manage their own affairs within that given county. So that's why we have these county assemblies and all that kind of thing. Now, when you look at the structures that is being proposed and has somehow found ground in about 9 or so counties, these are illegal things. Illegal things in the sense that it's a structure not known in law. When you look at the model is pinned upon Bunge la Wananchi. If you all remember, we used to have these things called Bunge la Wananchi here in town and all over. And people will just meet and caucus and talk about the generals or the ongoings and what's affecting them on a day-to-day basis, and it ends there. There are no resolutions passed in Bunge la Wananchi. It's a political thing that just brings people of like mind together to discuss issues. It ends there. Because it's a structure that is being created without knowing where it anchors itself. What are the resolutions going to do, or how are they going to be made from there? Because it's an illegal structure. I think as Kenyans we need to ask ourselves that we fought so hard to have our constitution. People died in that constitution in terms of pushing for that constitution. People are still having some scars that they push for this constitution. We all agreed what kind of constitution we want to have. We all agreed what kind of institutions we want to have. What is so difficult, what is not working with those existing institutions? So I think that I have no idea. The chief strategist is here. I've got no idea where he's going. But for me, it's a jellyfish approach in terms of how NASA is pushing for the jellyfish approach.
Jellyfish approach. Jellyfish approach. There are issues that have been raised, concerns on possible meandering out of the Constitution. Issues of funding. I know Aiden Duale, the majority leader, has already raised issue with whether or not state funds would be used to establish those people's assembly. Issues of mandates. Do county assemblies have the mandate to discuss this kind of issues as presented in those motions? But more so, the biggest question is what next? Now that 9 counties have passed this motion, there could be more, but what happens next after they do this?
First, let me decline, with a lot of humility, the title that KK just gave me, Kissinger just gave me. I'm not the chief strategist. I make my contributions as part of a team. There are people there who are who make much more contribution than I do. So thank you. It's a nice title, but I will not accept it for now. Okay. Hopefully, it'll end up there. Let me teach them some law again, these young lawyers. You cannot disband a county. You see, Senator Irungu, I don't know where he gets this, that the president, and I think he actually believes what he's saying, that the president can disband a county. It cannot happen, and a president cannot disband a county. Only the people of Kenya, through a referendum and through a well laid out process, can decide if they want to alter the boundaries. Not even disband a county, alter the boundaries of a county. So what the president can, again through a process, not just him alone, through a process, is to suspend a county government, or ultimately, if that process has given those recommendations and the Senate agrees, then to disband that county government, and then you go back to the elections, and the people can give it right back to you, the same government, as I know soon is happening in Catalonia, in Spain. They're going to elect those very same people, and that government will go right back and continue with their resistance in Catalonia. You are asking about what next. First of all, these things are not unconstitutional, because if they were, we know very well that there are remedies in law. If there's anything that anybody is worried that is illegal or unconstitutional, there are remedies in law, and they have those options are open to them, instead of them every day shouting that we are engaging in illegalities and unconstitutional things. But secondly, and perhaps even more important, even though you may say this is unconstitutional, at one point it was unconstitutional even to discuss what we are discussing here. It was illegal even to push for a new constitution, but we did. We didn't obey Moi's threats and whatnot. We continued, and Kibaki also. We continued pushing.
So you do agree that it's out?
The same way, it's not outside. I'm just saying, even if it were, even if they want to characterize it as unconstitutional, as Moi before them did, as Kibaki partly, particularly Kibaki after the 2005 referendum partly did, to characterize certain very legitimate political activity as illegal and unconstitutional. Of course, we defy, and we continue doing it and dare them, take us to court. Let's see whether you can fill the jails with us, because we will continue to push for as long as we know, and we are very clear. You had Harvey here talk about the tyranny of legal minds and intelligence within NASA. We strictly engage in political activity that is legal and constitutional. These assemblies, and very soon, unfortunately, Senator left, very soon even Muranga is going to pass this. Muranga, his own county, is going to pass this bill. He may not believe it, he may think it's very far-fetched, but this is literally handing power to the people. Where their elected and nominated representatives have failed them, or where they have no confidence because some of these guys, most of them are computer generated, and they decide, no, hold on a minute, we donated this power to you to serve us. We have the mandate under Article 1 to take it back ourselves and then redirect you, because you are going in the wrong direction. Either redirect you who are there or those who will come after you. So where next is that the various county assemblies will continue to pass these motions, these bills into law. They will be people's assemblies established as building blocks at the county level to discuss the failure in the experiment of democracy in Kenya, the failure of the experiment of constitutionalism in Kenya, the failure of the experiment of electoral justice in Kenya, the failure of the experiment of the governance system, particularly the executive and the legislature, and a few other things. The misuse of security services by selfish politicians, and so on. They will discuss this and others, and those will feed into now a series of national level people's assemblies. And ultimately, once you have achieved what you are looking for politically, the same people will use the law to give it the clock of legality, which I think my brothers here are worrying about. Don't worry, it will come. But you have to go through a process. You don't start with the law. You start with the people, you take it through the process, and ultimately...
You keep saying different things. You said it is constitutional, but now you're saying you're not necessarily starting with the law.
No, you're missing my point.
Eventually it will become
You're
legal.
missing my point. You're missing my point. When we engage in political processes, they are not necessarily legal processes. Legal processes. They are lawful, but they are political processes. Okay. Things come out of these political processes, like certain resolutions, that we like this system of governance, we don't like this. But at that point, when you are agreeing, you have not yet put them in law. You understand?
Which could necessitate a referendum probably to change this
That is a process of the law.
Okay. So you're saying probably what you're looking forward to after this motions of establishing People's Assembly is that eventually we may have a referendum where we'll change the constitution and take into account what has been discussed at the county level and possibly at the national level, and change the constitution to conform to that?
That is one of the options open to us. There are many options open to us. So I just want to calm down my brothers and tell them, calm down. Everything that is happening is lawful, and the final end will be cemented and coded in what is acceptable to all of us as Kenyans in law. So they should calm down.
But Nelson Harvey, there are those who say that probably what NASA is doing with this push for establishment of People's Assembly, that probably NASA is not really genuinely pushing for People's Assemblies. It's just a way of digging in preparation for this much talked about dialogue. That of course you have to take a hard stance so that when the other side agrees to dialogue, at least you come to the table with something. Does it mean that if Jubilee was to agree to some sort of dialogue, that NASA will abandon the push for establishment of People's Assemblies?
Now, it's easy to appreciate why Jubilee finds it very difficult to understand what People's Assembly is, because, like they have done before, they are so dumb they can't even notice a bombshell when one has landed. Now, look, they are equating a People's Assembly to a Jivanji Bunge. Now, they're equating the judicial process through the Supreme Court to a Vioja Mahakamani. Now, therein lies the problem. And with this type of mentality, they won't be able to understand. But anyway, it's not in our business as NASA to educate them on what they're supposed to do. But because we have an opportunity now, let's educate the change reform movement that has over 70% of the voting population in Kenya. Listen, the People's Assembly is a process that is anchored in the Constitution, because the Constitution gives sovereignty to the people, and this sovereignty can be exercised directly or indirectly. Now, indirectly through elected leaders, directly through the people themselves. And the foundation of the exercise of this power is at the basic level of devolved government, that is the county government. And it's for that reason that the People's Assembly must first gain foot through the counties. And you see, the county assemblies are the ones mandated under the Constitution to have the last option of bringing constitutional change when such a motion cannot be passed through Parliament. And why are we doing this?
But there is a process for that,
yes,
provided for in the Constitution.
Yes.
Why didn't you just go for that?
No. Why are we doing this? We are doing this because the Jubilee administration has dominated the legislature, and as a result of that has taken control of the executive, and nothing good can come out of that process. That is the reason as to why we are now reverting back to the original source of exercise of sovereign power, which is directly by the people. And this is exercised through the People's Assembly. And as and when we reach that point in time when we'll submit a question to the people, to make a decision on how they want to exercise their sovereign power, now that the constitution has been hijacked by people who did not have any aspirations, by people who do not want to uphold the constitution, by people who want to take us, not even 10 years back, they want to take us 60 years back before independence. And that is when we'll be able to restore constitutional order. And it has been a clarion call that we cannot have any progressive development in Kenya. We cannot have any meaningful election, because much as we have a very elaborate electoral law mechanism to ensure free and fair election, we have individuals who have infiltrated all the oversight bodies, and we cannot have any progress when that is the case. We now have to go back to the drawing board, where people, and in this case I'm talking about 70% of Kenyans' voting population, can determine matters that will have to oversight
back to my question. If at all Jubilee was to agree to some sort of working relationship with NASA, would you still pursue the establishment of people's assemblies?
It must be understood that we are not negotiating, because you see, Jubilee has time without number thought that we can give you this, you forego this, we give you this. That's not the case. You understand? Because 70% of a group cannot be negotiating with 30% of a group. It just doesn't make mathematical logic or common sense. The position is this, Ndimuli. We have a constitution that has given us these rights. And these rights are what in law we call inalienable rights. They're not rights that you cannot negotiate over. This must be done. And it will be done. It may take a day, it may take 2 months, it may take 10 years, but verily it will be done. We've seen in other places how the fruition of the passage of time has ensured that these things are done. And this will be done.
Bwana Kakai Kissinger, so far 9 county assemblies have debated and passed the motion. If it continues like this and it gets to 24 or 24 counties, that means at least half of the counties in the country have done that. Don't you think that Jubilee should be worried if at all it gets to that point? Because it's also a show of might that half the counties are going NASA's way.
As I said before, I think this is a jellyfish approach to how NASA is dealing with this issue at hand. And they have this kind of something starting, but they don't know where it's going, they don't know where the tail is, they don't know where the head is. And one of the critical things that takes us back is just to understand what the Constitution talks about. Because I think that who interprets the Constitution wants to interpret the Constitution that fits them. I think, as I said before, it's very clear that when you're interpreting a Constitution, you look at literally what the wording of the Constitution meant and what's the purpose of these structures. And that's what I'm saying. You go in an election, you elect members of Parliament. You give them the responsibility in the Constitution to do what they have to do. You go into an election, you elect the Senate. You give them the responsibility of what they are supposed to do. When you go to with the current Constitution, we devolved. We formed 47 counties. We then appointed leaders in those counties, MCS, governors, and so forth and so on. We gave them the responsibilities of what to do. What has failed in these institutions that amounts to forming this kind of approach, which NASA is not talking about? They don't want to talk about it because they know very well that that's not the contest. The contest is something else completely different. So what they're doing, in essence, I can tell you, is an illegality. And my good friend knows that very well. In the next 2 or 3 weeks, you will have a court order stopping all this hullabaloo that is going on, because these are illegalities. Somebody will move to court to challenge or to even seek for a constitutional interpretation. And mark my words very well. And you will see clearly courts coming out clear and saying whatever they are doing is illegal.
Okay. And what happens if that a court actually issues an order stopping the establishment or even a debate on such a motion at the county level? What happens?
For now, I can only tell them, bring it on. Because what are they waiting for if they honestly believe that these are illegalities, what we are engaging in? Bring it on, and that's a good way to go. Take it to the Constitutional Court for review. Let the judiciary tell us that this is
you believe what you're doing is within the law.
We not only we know first and verily believe, and that's why we are engaging in it, that this is honest, legal, legitimate, constitutional, political activity, which cannot be made unlawful by tantrums from Jubilee.
Okay.
Yeah, so they remain totally lawful. So it's not even something we, you know what my brother Kakai Kissinger says that they will take it to court. I'll say bring it on, but it's not even something we will lose sleep over. We will not. We will just send Harvey there alone. We don't even need the other lawyers to go there. Harvey will be more than enough to demonstrate to them.
Harvey, now that you already have a job, they say they will take it to court, and NASA strategist here says they will send you to court. Do you believe that this is something that can be challenged? Its constitutionality can be challenged in a court of law?
Well, you see, I don't know how they can threaten to take us to court, because court is where we do our game best. You understand? And we've told them time without number that we are people who obey the rule of law.
Absolutely.
And we can justify with meticulous precision each and every action we undertake on the basis of the Constitution, on the basis of legislation. And look, it's not lost to us that they may want to manipulate the court process to arrive at that decision, because they have done that before. On 1st of September, they are quick to come out blazing, say, okay, fine, we will fix this Mikoras, we'll take care of this judiciary, we'll tame your powers. So most likely that's what they have been doing over time, as they wait for us to pass many of these motions in the assemblies. But verily, let it rest onto their ears, and let it also become manifest in their eyes that this is the point. Sovereign power belongs to the people, either through the legislature or through the judiciary. If they manipulate any of this process, the people will still come up and say, what you've done, what you seem to be clothing with some measure of legality through a court process that you have interfered with. And we've seen Jubilee do this time without number.
So even if a court order is issued against this, you will still push you will still push through with it, probably in a different way.
No, in the Mule, don't trap me. I'm a lawyer. If there is a court order, we'll obey a court order, but we'll deal with the court order in the manner known in law. If the court order has been obtained through bribery of a judge, we'll point out, and this is not the first time I've done this, I've pointed out a judge who made a decision on account of bribery, and we got him out of the judiciary. So let these judges who have been bidding Jubilee's bill know. We will deal with them. You understand? Okay. We will deal with them. Okay. There will be no mercy. And for the Jubilee leaders, please clear the police cells, clear the prisons, and ensure that they are conducive environment, because you may be the ones occupying this when the people decide that it's time now to assert sovereign authority.
Okay. Let's take a break now. Let's head out to Nyeri for another update. Martin Monene is now at the home, at the venue where the late Dr. Wahome Gakuru, the late governor for Nyeri County, will be laid to rest tomorrow. Let's get an update from there. Martin?
A very good morning once again to you, Fred. And like you rightly put it, we are at the venue where the funeral service for the late Nyeri Governor Dr. Wahome Gakuru is expected to take place. And this school where I'm standing is Kagumo High School, a venue that was arrived at after concerns were raised that the former venue, which was a Kirisho Primary School, was a little bit small for the numbers they expect to come and grace the occasion as they send off the Nyeri governor. And if my cameraman Emilio can just help us see what is going on here. Behind me, you can see that piles of chairs that have been brought here so that I think everybody who will be coming here can have a place to sit. And behind that, you can see final touches being put on the dome by members of a certain company that has been contracted to do this. And just final touches really in preparation for what is going to be going on here tomorrow. And also a little bit further from where I am, you can see cleaning actually taking place with people dressed in prison uniform actually doing the cleaning in this particular area, just to ensure again that once guests arrive here tomorrow, they can be received accordingly. And also on this other side, you can see some chiefs. We've got people actually they're walking away just to ensure that things are actually done in accordance to the standards of a national event like what we're going to be having tomorrow. So as it is, Fred, I can say that in this particular place, it's all systems go as plans are put in place to ensure that Governor Dr. Wahome Gakuru gets a proper send-off tomorrow. And of course, we've been informed that our officials from the national government and also from the county government will be coming in this particular venue in the afternoon to just inspect it and ensure that it is up to the standard that is required to give a proper send-off and a respectful one for that matter to the late Nyeri Governor Dr. Wahome Gakuru. That is how things are in this particular region. Back to you in studio, Fred.
Thank you, Martin, for that update from the venue of the funeral service. Tomorrow's funeral service ahead of the burial of the late Governor for Nyeri County, Dr. Wahome Gakuru, is being laid to rest tomorrow. Of course, plans underway at that venue in preparation for that event.